Hey, Buru, hey, Boya, hey, Buche, everybody in Cyberland. It's your favorite Babalao. At least I hope so. Omodun, Odileke, coming at you with another great inspirational Sunday. All right. So, you know, I like to always say, if you want to spread the wealth, if you want to spread the knowledge, hey, give the like, get the subscribe, right? Share, because we all know that a little bit of sharing can go a long way. I always like to set the deck, right, by saying, hey, let's start throwing our questions in the chat because we'll definitely have some time to review. I'm not necessarily against talking about other things outside of Oyekun, but Oyekun has, 16 signs, everything from Oyekun Meiji, right, all the way down to Oyekun Ofun, right? And when we say these things, we got to kind of remind ourselves that, nonetheless, we're going to be here and we want to get after it. Nonetheless, we want to make sure that we're doing what we have to in order to educate the population, in order for us to educate ourselves, right? So, Inspirational Sunday, if you haven't really noticed what I've been doing, I've been kind of tagging along on the 16 Meijis so that we can have an interactive dialogue, right? A live dialogue every Sunday. You already know that it's going to be at 7 p.m. or maybe 7:15, depending on what's going on throughout the day, because there's a lot of things and a lot of working and moving parts, and my reach and assistance with the community is definitely a lot further. Therefore, it's a little bit time consuming, right? So I want to make sure that I'm prepared, and I want to make sure that I'm talking to you guys, and I want to make sure that setting everything up, all those things come into play. So definitely, definitely excited to be here with you today because this is a particular Odun that has a lot of significance, right? When we talk about the significance of the Oyekun series, we're talking about everything that is opposite of kind of what we talked about in the Yobe series, right? Part one and part two. We noticed that we got a little long-winded in Yobe part one, and we had to cut it off halfway because we were already at an hour. And if I would have went with the other half, it would have been 2 hours. And I value your time, and I absolutely value my time. But I want to bring the knowledge to each and every one of you. So as we allow people to kind of connect, as we allow people to kind of catch on to the live, right? I want to make sure that again, I thank each and every one of you. I think none of this is possible, right? If I don't have anyone to speak to, if I don't have anyone to share my perspectives with, I always like to kind of give the disclaimer, right? That I am not the end all be all. I am merely one perspective of many Bawalaos out there, and I respect every lineage and I respect every ile. So I think it's very important for us to kind of keep that into perspective. So with that said, Iburu boy to each and every one of you that are logged in, right? And I wanna kind of just jump into it. I want to make sure that we understand where we're going and how we're going. So let's talk about it, right? So what do we know about Oyekun Meiji? We know that if Oyekun Meiji is the opposite of Eyobe, we know that there is a level of darkness, right? Why? Because we understand that Eyobe was the sun that's rising in the east, right? We understand that, Eyobe was the concepts of Ori and the concepts of your mind, your subconscious mind, and the destiny that is leading you to. So Oyekun Meiji, right, is a foundational Odu that represents kind of a pure, unaltered energy, right, of darkness and mystery. Right now, as the second sign, right, in Ifa corpus, right, it embodies the hidden aspects, right, of existence. It's a very mysterious sign like that, and the potential for transformation, because Oyekun Meiji is now the transformation from light to dark. So, so why do I say these things, right? Because Oyekun Meiji speaks of the balance between life and death, ignorance, and enlightenment. And how do we navigate right through through this type of darkness can lead to some profound wisdom, some profound mysteries, some unanswered questions that maybe one or many of you maybe have going forward. Hey, little boy Abucheche Steve, I see you on there. So let's talk about that a little bit, right? So Oyekun Meiji, let's start with the baseline. Oyekun Meiji teaches that, within the darkness lies the seed of knowledge, right? Because we will be naive to ignore the darkness, right? And only focus on the light. That doesn't give you the equilibrium that's required in order to be successful in this faith. So, it invites kind of a deep reflection point, right? An introspect where we're guiding individuals towards uncovering hidden truths. I could probably say right now with confidence, right, that anybody who logs in, anybody who has Oyekun as their first leg of their Odu, maybe in their hand of Ifa, maybe in their Toyale as a Babalao, their first sign in a Babalao, you begin to kind of understand that there's a lot of things going on there. And they always find a spot, right, in their life where they have to take a step back and reflect, right? And that's what's going to guide them towards those hidden truths, the things that are going to allow them to grow. Oyekun Meiji, is a sign that, those who walk in this Odu or any of the Omolus or the combinations of Oyekun, often, spiritually protected. They walk with the Eguns. They walk with a certain energy that resonates with them, but requires a lot of work to tame it, right? Because untamed energy can combust. Untamed energy can go anywhere, right? So that's the big piece that we got to focus on. So more importantly, particularly, this spiritual protection keeps them, kind of safe, right, from premature death, from unseen dangers, right? It often is a kind of like a roadmap to safeguard one person's life, right, from peril, right? So the other piece of Oyekun that we got to focus on is going to be the transformation that occurs when they hit their trials and tribulations in life. Anyone that's accompanied with Oyekun, right? This sign, acknowledges that life struggles are a path to growth, right? That nonetheless, adversity becomes the credible, right, kind of concept that tells you that, hey, where is your strength and where is your character forged from? And those folks that can actually pull that off find themselves in a really good place. Now, I would tell you there's some other sides to Oyekun. Just like any Odun and Omulu, you'll find out really quickly that Oduns have pros and cons. Oduns have Ire and Osolbos. Oduns are in perfect alignment, right? So I would be remiss if I told you that, hey, there's profound wisdom in Oyekun. We got protection and guidance in Oyekun. There's always going to be a transformation for the best in Oyekun. There's connections to the ancestral wisdom in Oyekun, which I didn't mention, but there's a lot of connection to the Eguns, right? It kind of serves kind of like the bridge between the living and the dead, right? Or living in the spiritual world, right? Kind of fosters, guidance from the ancestral side. But now let's talk about the cons, right? We talked about the pros, let's talk about the cons. The cons are those obstacles that I was telling you about that will eventually transform itself into something beautiful. Those obstacles and those delays in these type of oduns that start with Oyekun signify barriers, delays in achieving a goal, right? And maybe you struggle a little bit to try to get to where you were. And for those who are successful with Oyekun, you worked hard and you earned everything that you got. Because Oyekun series of things requires patience, persistence, right? You can't just give up because you ran into a roadblock. The other thing about Oyekun that's not necessarily a pro, but is a con is the isolation and the loneliness of things. Right? Oyekun tends to lead, right, to feelings of being misunderstood, of being isolated. Its energy is pulled inward towards, contemplation and seclusion. Right. So those with this sign has to be very careful not to shine away from the world and not to kind of lock themselves in their house, their apartment. They have to be able to see the world for what it is. They got to be able to hit these trials, and they got to be able to hit it well, focused and ready to go. Right. So, little boy, Buche Check Quentin, I see you on there. Hey, the other thing about the Oyekun series of things is the health challenges. Whenever I see Oyekun in any type of consultation or an Ida, the first thing I want to start to ask is, hey, what does the blood and the skeletal system look like? Right? Particularly because these are the areas that we have health concerns in with the Oyekun series of things. And if you are a person that lives with this particular Odun or the Odun series, it's going to be very important for us to remember that, right? Because as doctors try to figure out what's wrong with you, maybe something comes up, it's very important that we reflect on this. If it's blood related, skeletal related, go to IFA, get the checkup, get the Ebo, and let's clean this out of the path. The struggles with fear. The darkness of Oyekun can invoke a fear, right? That can sometimes paralyze a person. And that's something that we got to always be very careful about. In Oyekun, series of things, this can make individuals kind of hesitant, right? To take risks, right? Or face challenges head on, right? And these are the type of things you got to be careful about. The other thing about the Oyekun series of things, we talk about some of the symbols, right? And one of the symbolic things in Oyekun, we talk a lot about, the cosmic womb, right? Like a woman has a womb, right, with a child, but now think about it in a grand scale. A place of incubation, right, before birth, right? So the reason why I think this is important to kind of explain when we say that Oyekun Meyi now talks about that void, that darkness, right? Imagine when a baby is conceived in the stomach, there's a lot of darkness in there, right? And you got to kind of better understand what that means. Oyekun Meyi is what represents that. The unseen forces that shape existence. This is why Oyekun a lot of times it resonates with darkness, because a lot of times it doesn't necessarily fit right into the beautiful, butterflies and rainbows and unicorn type of deal, right? And but it talks about those mysteries that shape existence, those secrets and those mysteries that shape existence, right? A lot of times you also got to think about the night in the hidden realms, right? The Odun, or these Oduns all govern night and hidden realms of life and teachings that true vision comes from navigating and understanding the dark. They sometimes have the best abilities and the best connections of connecting to that other side. Right? When we talk about Oyekun Meyi, and I'm going to dig deeper in a minute on the particular signs and who's defending and what to look out for, I'm going to dig a little deeper, but I think it's important for us to kind of understand this overview of things, right? You know, in today's context, in today's modern world, Oyekun Meyi reminds us of the importance of facing our inner shadows, embracing those parts of us that oftentimes, right, we avoid, or we don't necessarily tackle those problems that we may have with people, or problems that we may have with family, problems that we may have at work. Sometimes we got to hit things head on. It teaches us that personal growth, comes not just from success, but from confronting our fears, confronting our failures, confronting our uncertainties, and not necessarily dwell on them so that they can affect our present or our future. The Oyekun Maya things serve kind of like a guide, right? Kind of like navigating grief, loss, transition, right? I think we can all relate. We lost somebody that we love. And because we lost somebody that we love, we find ourselves grieving. And the next, their anniversary comes up and we're still grieving. and we don't know how to truly grieve or get past these things, right? But it's a fast paced, often a very superficial world, right? So Oyekun kind of tells us that we gotta sometimes slow down, analyze, be logical, push things away that we don't need, and move forward. We gotta reflect deeply with Oyekun. We gotta find the meaning in both the light and the yobe and the darkness and the aspects of life, right? And that's something that's very, very, very important. I would tell you that, whenever I see Oyekun Meyi, some of the most prevalent things that I always search for, and a lot of my fellow Bawalaos out there probably can agree, right? That we talk about eguns a lot, spirits a lot in the Oyekun series of things. They often, need offerings and rituals in order to align them and for them to better assist you. Because eguns are a funny thing, right? If you're not in par with your eguns, right, they can do two things, right? They can either help you, right? Stop helping you. As a matter of fact, I'll add a third one, begin to disturb you, right? Because they're trying to get the attention. They're trying, again, it's talking about that energy, right? And that compulsive energy that we got to make sure that we wheel in and we know how to vector so we can. So in addition, right? Um, we talk about protections, right? We talk about a lot about protective rituals that we do in order to block some of this negativity, maybe, or some of these cons that come into our life, right? By attending Eshu, right? El Rumila. We got to be able to ward off negative forces, right? And ensure that safe navigation that we talked about. We talked about the health aspects of things, blood and bones. And then we talked about how do you tackle the world? Well, with patience and persistence, right? Trust that, that delays are not denials, right? Sometimes delays are just what they are, delays. You'll get to the beautiful aspects of things. Something about Oyekun Meyi and a Buru Boya Bucheche Marcella, a Buru Boya Brooklyn. Oh, every time I turn around, I don't know if Brooklyn Brujo is David, but I don't know. Oyekun Meyi. Yeah, back to Oyekun Meyi. The last thing I will say before I start jumping into the Omolus of Oyekun-Obe, etc., right? Oyekun Meji, right? Within our understanding, this is the sign of when the earth, right? The birth and the creation of the earth, really, right? Yobe was the light, and Oyekun becomes this darkness. The light and the darkness now combine and create this synergy that now the earth is here. It's a pack, right? Between Ila and Eshu, right? The one that rules the day and the one that rules the night. Right? We talk a lot about where Oyekun Meyi, also is Mother Earth to a perspective, right? This is an Odun that sits in the feminine aspects of things. This is an Odun that introduced Iku, death, into the world. This is an Odun where men first learn how to begin to practice the hunter-gatherer concepts of things, right? This is a sign, right, that talks a lot about where the person has to, can be liable from a bad personality or maybe a very strong temperament, right? And can be liable for a lot of different things based on impulses, right? Somebody cuts you off, you want to punch them in the face, right? Somebody, so you have those impulse natures of things that we got to be careful about. Steve Lowe, Boya, can you say if you have Egungun, you're aligned with your Eguns? All right, Boya, Steve, I'm going to answer that one. Let me finish the Oyekun concept. And before I jump in the Omolus, I'm going to jump to questions. I got you. Okay. So when we talk about, the ability of trying to lose your composure, right? You can be liable for a lot of things, right? You can become great yet dangerous, right? We have to dedicate, right, drumming ceremonies to the Eguns, We gotta do things in the Lokumi side, which we call them cajons. You know, and in the Isheshe side, we know them as the Egungun ceremonies and festivals in order for us to break free and align ourselves. In Isheshe, they got the concepts of Igbe. That's very important as well, and that's dedication to the Eguns, right? It's a festivity, a consecration, initiation. You're gonna notice all those things become very heavy in the Oyekun series of things. Death and illness is close, in this sign, right? Or in Oyekun Meiji, we'll say. And we got to always remember that death is part of life and we cannot dwell over that. Yeah, it may hurt to lose someone, but it is what it is, right? And we move on with our lives because we have a destiny to fulfill, right? So, in this particular sign, right? The person has to live constantly doing ebosas, sacrifices, right? On top of Ifa, constantly kind of seeing, hey, where am I going? What's my vector, right? Get that also there, get that consultation, right? And like I tell many people, don't be shy. You got to get these things done, So when you continue to look at the Oyekun aspects of things, right? This is a sign that talks about no different in the darkness. We notice that there's these creatures that live in the dark, right? There's these creatures that hide in the dark and we never see them. That's how you should live your personal business. With Oyekun Meiji, right? With Oyekun Meiji, you shouldn't speak your business. Right? You gotta avoid gossip and spreading rumors. You gotta be kind of like that ninja almost, right? And those things are important. In Oyekumeyi, we understand that because you have trials and tribulations in this Odu or in this series of things, and particularly I'm talking on Oyekumeyi right now, we always got to be careful, right, on who's friend and who's foe. That's why we got to be careful with our impulses. We got to be careful with our emotions. We got to make sure we understand who's who in the zoo, and that thing's important, right? And Oyekumeyi, right, this is a sign. Oyekumeyi speaks particularly on trips or voyages, right, where one can encounter, animosity. Maybe someone's like, "Oh, you're taking a trip to, I don't know, to the beach, man," or maybe you're taking a nice trip on a cruise, or maybe you're going to Europe, maybe you're going somewhere, somewhere where someone is envious of your success, right? And then, when you arrive, you notice that things don't necessarily flow right. This is why if you line up with Oyekumeyi, it's very important for us to always remember, make those plans ahead of time to consult Ifa, do those ebosas and clean yourself out. That's Oyekumeji. Right? All these things that I'm saying now is all Oyekumeji, right? You got to be getting to understand where you're going and how you're getting there, right? In Oyekumeji, we got to be very careful with our intimate partners, with the people that we choose to be with us in life, right? To share our life with, our home with. Because in Oyekun there's always a possibility that you marry the wrong person, or you stay with the wrong person, or if you're a woman, you're pregnant, and if you're a guy, you got somebody pregnant, and it just doesn't work out, right? Now you're just the baby mama or you're the baby daddy, right? And making sure that those relationships, as best as you can, are always solidified. But basically, what I'm telling you is don't rush things and understand the relationship you're getting yourself into. And in addition, Oyekun Mei, Chango is your defender. Bafarafun Chango in this sign all day. Right? Chango will take good care of your relationships in this particular sign. Chango has a way in this sign of balancing that equilibrium in order for you to be successful, right? It's not always Ochun, right? Because it depends on what we're trying to counteract, right? In Oyekume, you always gotta serve Orumila, right? If you do Orumila right, Orumila is gonna do you right. One hand washes the other with Oyekume. In addition, we already kind of talked about this in all the Oyekun series, but in Oyekun Mei, you are the link with the Eguns. You got strong links with the Eguns, right? So you got to remember that. In Oyekun Mei, the rain does not, the rain favors you, right? But hats don't. I'd say this with very, very specific, I want you to give it close attention because a lot of times in Ifa or within our culture and our faith, we say, hey, don't get wet in the rain. But Oyekumeyi, Now get wet in the rain. Get wet in the rain. Why? Because no different than how the rain washes off the masquerades of the eguns that are trying to masquerade as humans, your connection with them you build, right? And that becomes a strength for you, right? I'm not saying go get sick and go out in the rain or anything like that, but I'm just saying don't be so stuck on the taboo of not getting wet in the rain, right? So we kind of understand some of those concepts of things. All right, now that I explained Oyekun Meyi, now I'm gonna jump into the Omolos. Let me take a look at the chat. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, so Steve Lowe, something that I need you to kind of explain to me when you say the Egungun. You're talking about the Egungun, right? The ones that are issued by the Isheshe lineage, right? And if you are, right, then I would say that is your first step of aligning yourself with your Eguns. Absolutely. Right? You still are missing a step here because within the Isheshe, and I am not an Isheshe Babalao, I'm a Lukumi, right? I am Afro-Cubano. I am, Criollo, right? That's my my lineage. But the reason why I tell you this is because, you also have Igbe and Isheshe concepts of things. And from my understanding in my study, right, is that Egungun and Igbe combined builds that network of eguns that you need, that strong link that I was just talking about in Oyekun Meiji. If that is not it in Lokumi, right, then we start to kind of say, what is this person destined for? And we start to kind of also reflect, no different in Isha She, on what other initiations or consecrations can you get in order to align you. In this sense, we do a spiritual misa and we investigate. Does a person need to get scratched? Does a person not need to get scratched? Does a person need to represent their eguns in a certain way in order to build that linkage? Does a person have a tile of egun as dictated in the Odun Obewali, to get a tile of egun, which we call teja de egun? And so then you start to kind of see we have different measures of things to include the boveda that gets set up within the Lokumi practices. Right. So those are how you begin to build that synergy. For some people, you may even have to go as far as receiving odum, right? For the males, right? That's very important, right? And those are just things that have to get investigated as we move forward. So hopefully that answers your question, Steve Lowe. All right. Oh, yes, it's David. All right, Buruboya. Michelle Miller, Buruboya. Don't forget. Don't omit Obefun. Ah, Buruboya. Did I omit it last time? Michelle, let me know. If I omitted Obefun last time, I will say it at the end. I will talk to you on Obefun. And then Vincent Boyd, my man Vincent. Hey, I'm gonna see you here in a couple of weeks, Vincent. Hey, Buruboya. Steve Lowe, HO. All right. Hey, does the science speak on the ancestral debts, Padrino? Steve, the ancestral debts. You're gonna see that concept kind of spoken about in many different facets, right? It's just not in the Oyekun series of things. Ancestral debts is a very broad term, right? That's like saying I want a sandwich from a restaurant. And then I tell you, well, which restaurant? Right? You got Firehouse Subs, you got Blimpies, you got Subway, you got Jersey Mike's, you know what I mean? You feel what I'm getting at? So then, we start to kind of figure out what does that mean, right? So when we talk about ancestral debt, we talk about things that maybe still need to be flushed out, right? From either a atonwa, a reincarnation. Maybe it's a debt that within your lineage, your eguns are putting on you to fulfill in order for them to get the light and the necessary things that they need, right? In order for them to prosper. And if they prosper, you prosper, right? So again, one hand washes the other. Maybe it's the ancestral debt of, hey, this reincarnation or this destiny I've never really walked. Maybe I was destined to be a Babalao and I didn't walk all the lands that I needed to walk and I never made it to that finish line. Maybe you just need to fulfill your destiny and be the best version of you, right? So ancestral debt has a lot of different, combinations of things that if it ever comes up and someone tells you ancestral debt, they owe you a definitive answer on, hey, what are you talking about ancestral debt? How do I fix it? Let's ask Ifa. how I can better navigate that. Hopefully that makes sense, Steve. Sherry, Ache, Steve Lowe, Orisha Egungun. Yeah. Okay, not perfect. I think I answered your question though, Steve, because you're talking Nisha shit. All right. Buru boy bucheche kang, mufuri bale ifa. All right, hey, buru boy kang, my man. Hey, buru boy bucheche. Obara meyi here. All right, and Ache Baba, yes, you answered the question. Great answer. Buru boy. All right, hey, I answered the questions. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. I can already tell I'm 30 minutes in, and I haven't even started talking about Oyekun Ogbe. Whew, we're in trouble, guys. We're in trouble. All right, so there might be a part two. There's definitely going to be a part two. There's not, it just has to happen. All right, let's talk about Oyekun-Obe now. Oyekun-Obe, pros. I'm going to go quick. Pros and cons. All right, pros and cons. All right, when we talk about Oyekun-Obe, we talk about transformation, resiliency. Right? Bottom line, this is an Odun that begins to teach us that we got to overcome obstacles and turning the hardships into opportunities, right? In Oyekun-Obe, we look at leadership because this is going to be very pivotal for you, not just transformation and resiliency, but now the leadership. It's the sign that this sign governs the rise of a lot of influential leaders through perseverance, right? So if you line up with Oyekun-Obe, hey, this is a sign for you. Run for politics, run for managerial positions, become a priest or a priestess, who knows? But you are a very influential leader that can lead massive amounts of people. Some of the cons here you're gonna hear and you're gonna reflect when I was talking overall about the Oyekun series of things is the isolation. Right, this is also a strong sign in Oyekun-Obe that talks about isolation. It brings a period of kind of loneliness, feeling misunderstood. Nobody's really getting what you're trying to say, right? And that's something we got to remember. Oyekun-Obe, why I like this sign is because it's a sign that has a lot of good duality, a lot of good balance, right? Oyekun and Obe, right? The light, the dark, and the light, right? Symbolizing this constant balance, right? Between, the hardship and the enlightenment. Always making sure that you're teetering back and forth from where you got to be and how you got to get there. That's going to be something that's very pivotal. Oyekun-Obe, to me, teaches the importance of facing life's challenges head on. Right? It's a sign that embodies the idea that growth often comes from discomfort. A lot of times we sometimes shy away from some of those challenges, but you need to have more confidence. Oyekun-Obe. Oyekun-Obe, more specifically speaking, we begin to kind of see the great confusion that came into the world, where Olofi had to intervene. While Olofi had to intervene, right, to put things in order. The world was in chaos, right? And it was in such chaos that we began to kind of see that, Oyekun-Obe, that even the Awoni Orumilas could not necessarily navigate the complexities of the world. They couldn't interpret Ifa properly, and that began to drive a lot of different problem sets, and within the society and the human aspects of things. In addition, when we start talking about Oyekun-Obe, we talk a lot about, where Ifa says, we gotta be able to, play the drummings, not just for Eguns now, but in Oyekun-Obe specifically to the Orisha. God says that we have to kind of play the drums to Orishas, honor the Orishas, right? Specifically in this particular Odu, right? When that happens to be a prescription and then both that needs to be done, we go towards our guardian Orisha or we go towards Orumila. Orumila first, and if that doesn't count, then we go to another one. But that's how we begin to kind of think about this drumming, right? Because Ifa says that this is the sign where we got to begin to call into the energies of the Orishas. Oyekun-Obe is a sign where Eshu, if you have an issue, you're Oyekun-Obe, you're going to take 3 little whistles. I like people to get the little whistles, the straight stick ones, right? Because they look a little cleaner when you keep them with your issue. And that's what you put towards your issue, symbolizing that an Oyekun-Obe it's taboo to whistle in your home or whistle in places where Eshu, right, is at. And for those who line up with Ota or Olorisha, right, that's the same taboo for Elegua. Okay. In Oyekun Ogbe, we begin to kind of see this is the staff of the Eguns, right? This is the reason why we see people that have staffs when they have their Teja de Egun, maybe it's an Egungun staff, going back to Steve Lowe. And but this is the concepts of, right? Something that's built, that's charged with elements, right? That's probably dressed based off of your spirit guide and your eguns, right? In order for you to build a connection now, not just through consecration, but through physical tools that you can use. Any aleyo, aborisha can use. So if you have NWV5, you don't have a staff of egun, or Oyekun Obe says get a staff of egun. It's okay, right? You just got to make sure you go through it the right way. Get a consultation from a Bawalao, see what is required and how we need to build it. And boom, the Bawalao builds it and gives you a staff of Egun. Oyekun Obe says you're going to live to be old, right? You're going to have a great long life, right? So if you're not happy with your life, hey, that's not a good time. Oyekun Obe, Mafarafun, Chango, Batala, Olokun, and the Mbis. Right, the Mbis and Lukumi, we call them Imawas a lot, twins, because they resonate very strong here. They're protectors here, right? So that's something in Oyekun Obe. In Oyekun Obe, there's also the taboo of do not eat liver, right? So for those who like some liverwurst and onions and all that stuff, you got to stay away from that stuff. That's definitely required. When we talk about the MBs, there's a special ebo here, right? And again, you're not gonna do an ebo unless it's marked through Ifa. So try not to get any bright ideas, right? Don't say, hey, the Pharaoh Bawalao, he said it on YouTube, and therefore I gotta go do it. No, 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 no. Make sure you get the consultation. In Oyekun Obe, this is where we do an ebo, we mark it, and we see if Ifa calls for it. When we buy a piñata, right? We're full of candy, right? And we invite the kids in honor of the MBs, right? And then so we take our Mawas or MBs, and so we receive them, we consecrate them, and then we do a party with a whole bunch of piñatas and candy and stuff. So kids come and we generate that energy of joyous nature, right? In order to fuel the MBs, in order to avoid anybody from ever taking that happiness away from us. It's a beautiful ebo. It's very sincere. I love that ebo. In Oyekun Ogbe, Oyekun Ogbe is also a sign where the person can't give love and affection too easily, right? And it's not because they can't. It's because there's some issues there from the past. People who line up with Oyekun Ogbe typically have a kind of a rough path, a rough past that kind of bleeds over to the present, going into the future, right? And it closes them up, almost makes them emotionally detached, right? And this is something that we have to be self-aware of. If you fall under Oyekun Ogbe, you don't have this problem, but oh boy, many blessings to you. But if you do, you got to begin to heal. You got to begin to let go. You got to begin to, seek the help that you need, whether it's talking to somebody, a life coach or something. Oyekun Ogbe, you need that in your life, okay? Oyekun Ogbe, this is a sign where the head always has to be aligned, where we're constantly finding ourselves going to Obatala, Mafarafun Obatala, and giving our heads the ebo that we need, right? The Oberia Leda. The Oberia Leda in this particular case, for this sign, is an ebo that the Bawalaos know what they got to do with the pigeons for Obatala, etc. But I'm not going to get into that per se. In Oyekun Ogbe, Oyekun Ogbe says that a lot of your blessings comes from the ocean. Mafarafun, Olokun, and Mafarafun, Yemaya in your life, right? A lot of your luck will come from there. So living near a river, an ocean, a sea, living by the water, believe it or not, can bring extra joy. And if it's the ocean or the sea or salt water, even better. But I get it, limitations, right? Not all of us are gonna have, oceanfront property. Oyekun-Obe always has a parent that's typically deceased in one way, shape, or form, right? They leave maybe a little earlier than we want them to or expect them to. Typically, is the spirit of the father. And typically, if that's not it, it's going to be the grandfather. And here's why I say that, because the masculine energy in Oyekun-Obe and the duality of it begins to call on the Egun, the masculine Egun, right, that accompanied this person during their birth. Typically is a father, typically is a grandfather, but it's very close to the lineage. And that's something that we have to discover during spiritual misas. Do you have to give something to the spirit in order to attend it so it can give you what you need in this world because it's looking for a little bit of light? When we talk about Oyekun Ogbe, we begin to talk about where we got to be careful with our intimate partners. We're already kind of closed in Oyekun Ogbe, but there's always that one person that tries to speak in your partner's ear, seduces your partner, right? And these are just things that we see as a pattern amongst this particular sign that we got to be careful about. So what does that mean? You just got to strengthen your relationship, have honesty in your relationship, have a certain layer of where we're going and how we're getting there, where you're going, so that transparency and that open communication, your relationship can flourish and make you stronger, right? And Oyekun Ogbe, we got to be careful about biting more than we can chew. And Oyekun Ogbe, this is an Odun where people like to take on big projects, maybe like to take on big business endeavors, right? And they're willing to take a lot of risk. And you got to be careful here. You got to be very careful with this particular sign, because you don't know what you're going to be able to handle, and your impulses might say you can handle it, but nah, you're not going to be able to handle it. But anyway, so I kind of leave you guys with that one. All right, where we at on time? 41 minutes. Ooh, boy, we are slow. Oyekungi Woody. But before I do that, let me make sure I ain't missing anything. All right, Steve Lowe got you. Sherry, would ancestral debt consist of ancestral curses? So here's the thing. Everybody comes down with baggage. All of our ancestors come out with baggage. Their debts need to always be paid. There's a karmatic cycle of things. I get all of that. Whether you call it a debt or whether you call it a curse, there's somebody or something or some type of energy that needs to be appeased in order to go away of things. So I would probably call it the same thing. I'll probably call it the same thing. Those things are real, right? Nothing's perfect, right? And especially us humans, we're flawed. We're all flawed, right? So hopefully that answers your question. But boy, check KD. But boy, I guess who? Tata, but boy, Tata, Kula. Watching from New York, my man, brother, my man. But boy, hey, my farafundi eguns in your life, Tata. Hopefully, the Eguns are taking care of you. Give a lot of love to the Sarabandas of the world and the all the Egun pots. But I keep it going. We keep it going. All right. Oyekun Woody. Oyekun Woody. Hey, when we talk about Oyekun Woody, we talk a lot about the premature labor of things, the ability to act before we can truly um, wrap our minds around what is going on in front of us. Oyekun Woody is one of those signs where, let's talk the pros. There's a lot of wisdom and intuition, right? This is an Odun that's associated, right, with the deep introspective aspects to uncover those hidden truths, something we were talking about earlier, right? But it has a lot of spiritual power behind it. Oyekun Woody is a sign of power, right? It's a strength of spiritual insight, making a person very highly intuitive. But that comes at a cost. Comes at a cost. So, when we begin to look at that cost, we got to go into the cons, right? I told you about the pros: wisdom, intuition, spiritual power. Cons: overthinking, a tendency to get lost in the analysis, right? Leading to indecision, right? Sometimes doing nothing is worse than doing something, right? And that's an old saying. Sometimes people fear getting their hands dirty because they're afraid of making a bad decision. But sometimes indecision is the worst decision, right? And that's something that comes out of Oyekun, right? Emotional turmoil, right? The emotional challenges, right? Sometimes creates a unbalanced person, right? You got to put our emotions in check, right? This is where a lot of times, and some people may say I'm esoteric to a certain point, but the hidden world, right? This world is full of secrets, right? The journey towards enlightenment and spiritual awareness is in front of us. And a lot of times we have to search and pull and tug, and we know that people are hiding things. Hell, we don't know the true story of everything, right? Maybe somebody did omit something from the history books. Maybe somebody doesn't want us to know about certain things about this world. But that is where a lot of those concepts come from. Or your Guni Woody. I'm trying to understand those things. But what did I just tell you? You get lost in the analysis. Be careful not to be the fanatic or be the conspiracy theorist, and now you're lost in there. I think that anybody with this sign, we got to encourage you to embrace both the logic and the intuition, right? We got to use our inner wisdom, right, to kind of navigate some of life's complexities. But that's just kind of how it is, right? So that's the reason why when we talk about Iwudi, Oyekun Iwudi, I always tell people you got to be careful with certain things, right? Because abortion, right, the loss of a child, right? Premature labor, kind of like someone has, went into labor, earlier than perspective when they were pregnant. These are all things that come out because this is a sign of hastiness. This is a sign of impulse. This is a sign of, we got to ensure we know where we're going and how we're getting there. In this sign of Oyekun Wudi, we know in this sign, right? Here's where the rich become poor and the poor become rich. Meaning that if you don't balance your life out in a certain way, you may be living on top of the hill today, but you're going to fall and you're going to hit rock bottom. And you got to be careful about that, right? So in this particular case, we got to be very considerate about money management. You got to know how you're spending your money. You got to know why you're spending your money. You got to make sure you got a detailed budget on what you're doing, right? The problem in this sign is the person who feels they have a lot of luxuries and they try to live a little bit more liberally than conservatively. When you're going Woody, that's a problem in your sign, right? So Oyekun Woody, we also understand that sometimes we can be blamed for someone else's mistakes. We can even get caught up in the justice system, right, because of somebody else's mistake, right? And so we got to be careful that someone is not trying to set us up, or we're hanging out with somebody, they do something, and they say, well, wait a minute, I didn't do it. He or she did it, right? Even though they did it, you're gonna get the blame. So in Oyekun Woody, what is Ifa telling you? Don't hang out with those type of people. Be careful who those people who can set you up. Right, that's important. In Oyekun Woody, a couple of taboos that I want you guys to remember. In Oyekun Woody, we don't eat pumpkin. In Oyekun Woody, we don't wear striped clothes. Right? In Oyekun Woody, we gotta also be very intuitive of accidents that can happen. Right? Maybe you left the candle on. Maybe you work with machinery. Maybe you like to take, high risk, sports like jumping out of planes and bungee jumping. You gotta be careful with these things. Accidents are prone in this particular order. This is a very destructive sign, right? When children are involved. So if you're aligned to this particular odum, right? The first recommendation is they need to receive their hand of Ifa. If you're in the Isheshe side of the house, because Steve Lowe got my head now with Isheshe, I'm kind of focused on it now. I'm hyper focused on it. So that's a good thing, Steve Lowe. So I appreciate you. You got to remember that the kids need to get their asentaye. They got to get their hand of Ifa. They got to get whatever they need to in order to for you to best understand how you can best push them forward, how you can best maneuver them. This is very important for the parents that have this sign and have kids, right? Hearing all this craziness about, oh, well, I want to wait till they grow up, make a decision. Get off of it. You want to raise your kid, right? And you want every tool available to you. You might want to just go ahead and jump on that and get after it, right? Just my perspective, right? You don't have to listen, but that's my recommendation. Because remember, in Oyekun-Obe, we talk about a lot of people who did a lot of irrational things. Abortions, they lost a child during stillbirth, they went into premature labor, something happened with the baby. Everything is there. So if you line up with Oyekun-Obe, do the right thing. That is my going in. Then when you go into Oyekun-Obe, something else that I want you to guys kind of understand, right? That, you know, the person in this sign has to be very spiritually neutral. Here's what I mean by that. You jumping from house to house, or maybe you like to go visit other botanicas and all these spiritual shops. You like to chat with, the Bawalaos on Facebook that hit you up the moment they know you're in the faith because you need a consultation or you know what I mean? Be careful. Be careful. This is a sign where people like to do bad things. Let's not be naive. This faith can be used for good and bad, right? And because that's the equilibrium of life. That's just what it is. So don't find yourself in that predicament where people are, got some heavy work they're trying to do on you for one reason or another. And if that does come out, you consult Ifa, we find you the solutions, we fix the problems, we adjust fire, and boom, we're right back on track. Because again, we're human, we gotta fix things. And that's what Babalaos do, we fix things. Hey, so then also when we talk about Oyekun-Obe, something that I want you guys to understand that this is an old doom that marks the birth of a daughter, right? Of Ochun. Or the person who gets his old doom is a daughter of Ochun. So that means that if you receive your hand of Ifa and you receive the masculine energy to Orisha, let's say you're a son or a daughter of Chango, your other half is probably Ochun. I'm not saying it is Ochun, but I'm saying most likely because my farafun Ochun in this sign, or Ochun is blessing the fertility in the family in this particular bloodline. So we got to give a lot of adimuses to Ochun. Go see Ochun at the river. Go ask for blessings to Ochun, and boom, watch what you get after. Let's keep it moving. Oyekun-Obe. In Oyekun-Obe, the other big thing that I want to kind of talk to you about is that you got to be careful about joining all these little clubs and fraternities and all these, groups. You got to be careful about being part of organizations, right, that are very how can I say, very intense organizations like the protesting type organizations, the people who are trying to fight the government organizations, the people who are probably doing things they're not supposed to be. You got to be careful with all that stuff. You got to be careful with all that stuff, right? You can't belong to any types of clubs or fraternities or groups, right? Remember, this is a sign where the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. You need to focus on yourself. You got head problems. You can't allow yourself to get into some of those um, illogical types of situations. So you got to be careful. You got to be careful. So it's very advised. Don't do it. The other thing that I want you to be understand about is that you got to stay away from hospitals, funerals, etc. If you have to go to a hospital, funeral, etc., right? You got to consult the Babalao, go talk to your madrina or your godmother, your whoever your spiritual leader is, in order to they could tell you how to clean yourself when you leave these places, especially you in this particular sign. There's things that we do in general in our faith, right? With cacarilla, with white flowers, and we clean ourselves, and boom, boom, boom. All right, we're good to go to ensure that we don't drag anything along. But for you, you got to make sure that you are 100% all the time. Okay, in Oyekun-Obe, you're gonna have a lot to do with palo, right? Steve Lowe, hyper focused again, right? And if it's not palo, something I said earlier, if you're an Isheshe lineage of things, get your Egungun, get your Ibis set up, make sure you got your stuff squared away, right? Again, in the Lukumi side, you're probably gonna have to get a spiritual me side. You're probably gonna have to get scratched, and you're gonna have to start working some Egun in order to get some things squared away. Beautiful sign, right? A lot of work. All right, we're gonna jump into Oyekun-Obe. I'm at 54 minutes. What? Let's see what I got in questions. Hey, Buddha boy Bucheche. Let's see Michelle. Hey, Buddha boy Paul. The fear of the unknown more than the trust of the unknown. All right, Buddha boy. Sound like a wise man. Hey, English books recommended for Santeros and up and coming Babalaos. Hey, Kang, here's my suggestion. For Babalaos who are up and coming, shoot me an email. Look in the description. Shoot me an email. I don't mind kind of working with people. I like to work with other Bawalaos, especially young Bawalaos. I don't necessarily like when young Bawalaos or, don't necessarily have the guidance that they need from the elders. But in many cases, I love to teach. If you guys haven't noticed, I like talking. I like to kind of get into the rhythm of things. And I love to give my perspective, right? Now, again, not saying that everything I say is perfect, but anyway, I would say that, for upcoming Santeros and Babalaos, honestly, it's not a book that you're going to need to learn. Here, I'll give you some really easy steps. Learn your Moyumba. Okay, learn your Moyumba. Also, start to learn if you're a Santero, you got to start to learn your what is the Ita, right, of your guardian Orisha. If you're an Olorisha, right? Learn the Ita of your guardian Orisha, of Elegua, and then the combination thereof, right? That your godparents should be able to tell you what that means when we talk about um, pata y cabeza. That's the concept we say in Lukumi, but it's the merger of those two deleguns together in order to create an astrological sign for you. And then your mano de orula. If you're on Lukumi, if you're not in Lukumi, what did your last asentaye maybe say, or your dafa, right? And see how that you need to navigate those things. Those are the foundational things you need to learn. You learn your Moyumba from there. If you're a Babala, you learn your 16 Mayis from there. You start to understand that you got to begin to consult yourself in order to kind of see the challenges that you have. So if you're a Santera, a Santero, or Olorisha, better yet, making sure you understand the full aspects of the bóveda, the shells, your ita, your moyumba. How do you throw, obiabon, which is, the coconuts. You know what I mean? If you're an isheshe or biabata, when so we got a lot of different things that you have to learn, but those are not necessarily things you got in books. I do like books, and I have a library of books. And a lot of it is more for, I won't say entertainment, but more on the philosophical perspective of things. I like one particular book, the one that's labeled Bawalao, that comes from Odi-Oyekun. I got another one from, let me see here. I got another one that came from Ochan Lele. So, Ochanile is he has a pretty good amount of books. Marcelo Madang has a pretty good amount of books. I like those people. I trust them. Who I don't trust, to be honest with you, I'm just gonna be honest with you. I don't like the new mark, right? Neimark. I got a couple of books there, but I'm not convinced. I don't like it. Um, Charles Spencer King, he has a couple of good books. Who else? Yeah, there's a couple of things there, but I think that's enough to kind of hold you down for now. That's good perspective. All right, you saw me. I had to look on my shelf. All right, let's see what else we got over there. Buddha boy Bucheche. I missed Oyekun Sa. Nah, you didn't miss Oyekun Sa. I haven't gotten to Oyekun Sa. Do you know of any autistic child that has their mano de orula and specific procedures with them? Steve Lowe, absolutely. Steve Lowe, absolutely. You got to remember, an autistic child is blessed, right? Is blessed and will always be guarded by Obatala himself or herself, depending on the path, right? But nonetheless, yes, I am familiar with a couple of things that is done, right? But it's all based on that old doing with that child, right? On how to best navigate them, and how to best work with them, right? So, again, always shoot me an email. Should they swear in? Can you post the books? Eddie, I make a deal with you, brother. Save me some time because I'm sure I'll forget. Yeah, Nemark, they're in interesting and Michelle, I don't, I try to stay away from the conflicts. You notice I get a little passive. If you guys go to my podcast, I'm not very reserved at all. My podcast is I'm gonna let you have it, and we're gonna see where we goes. But yes, I guess I had to agree with you. I have to agree with you. All right. All right. Hey, so here's what we're gonna do. Here's what we're gonna do. I am already at 1 hour right now. Okay, and I still gotta say bye to you guys, etc. And so, man, hey, tons of views. Super excited you guys logged in. I'm thinking there's gonna be a part two and a part three for you. Absolutely seems that way. So that means I owe you a part two. So Oyekun D is where we left off. Someone's got to keep me honest, right? Oyekun D is where we left off, and then we'll kind of chop it up from there for sure. Right, so let me see. Vincent, let's say you're saying Oyekun Woody, it speaks of being cautious about joining organizations. Does this mean keeping bad company, or does it mean organizations that will assist you for promotion at work? No, no, no. Your profession's your profession. When the groups that I'm talking about, and I'm glad you brought that up because I don't want to cause any confusion. It's the groups that don't necessarily fall into the pillars of life, right? Your physical well-being, your spiritual well-being, your emotional well-being, right? And your mental well-being, right? So things that you need physically are going to be in those departments of your work, right? Working out, being a member at a gym, right? That's all okay, right? If you're part of a union at your job, that's to protect you, right? You have to make sure that you are not overanalyzing those things, right? Just like the sign talks about, right? The over analytical mind that's undecisive. So don't, and I don't know if you line up with this sign well, but if you do, just so you have some ideas. All right. Beautiful. Notifications turned on for the next episode. Nah, I appreciate that. I hope all of you that subscribe. I hope all of you get after it. This was beautiful. I always have, a lot of love for you guys. I absolutely have Instagram. Look at my descriptions. Again, guys, go into the descriptions, my email, the website. Everything is on there. Facebook, all that good jazz, Instagram. So feel free to do that, okay? So with that said, hey, Buru. Iboya Ibucheche Cyberland. A lot of love to each and every one of you. I'm glad we were interactive today. A lot of people logged on, a lot of great questions. And again, I will see you next Sunday, Inspirational Sunday, every Sunday around 7 p.m. for sure. Iburu, Iboya, Ibucheche.